When last we left our intrepid adventurers, the party was lost in the woods, and they encountered a group of Desiratan cavalry who claimed to be the royal horsemen of the throne of Desirata. But they say they serve the Jechennis Deborah I. The soldiers say that the Jechennis Deborah isn't dead after all, but in a nearby place, waiting to meet with the party. The commander of the cavalry says this is obviously very confusing, and maybe they should discuss it over lunch. The lunch is very good, and there's lots of beer, which makes Seraph very happy. The commander of the royal horse introduces himself as Den Alt leader Alcine of Sandtowers. Ulysses points at him and asks if he was in jail in Red Jack. Alcine nods and says that he was. However, someone killed the local commander, Tonda Avon, and in trying to find who did it, most of the soldiers were drawn away from the jail, and Alcine was able to escape. He bows his head in thanks to the party. Scala asks why the Jechennis Deborah would come up into the hills to hide, rather than fight for the kingdom like her brother Kenna Stephen. Alcine says that when her family was killed, Deborah was horribly hurt. She was found by several of the royal horse and brought here for safety. She was very, very sick for a long time, and by the time she was well enough to lead, the civil war was over and Destaria had won. All those loyal to Deborah had gone to the south, but now she is strong and wishes to reclaim her throne. She needs to be with her people in the south to help raise an army. Australia informs Alcine that Deborah's son Junico also survived the murder plot and now reigns in the south. Is that going to be a problem? It might split the rebels. Alcine nods and tells her that Deborah knows about Jun, and that is part of the reason she wants to meet the party and discuss her coming into the south. Ulysses and Akai start yawning, and despite Finn wanting to perform the woodchopper song for the first time for a real audience, they accept Alcine's offer of a place to sleep, understanding that they will leave for the Jechennis' location the next day. The party goes to a large tent that has been given to them to rest and relax in, as well as clean off some of the swamp mud. Scala doesn't sense a trap, but she knows for a fact that Morgan, Marcus, and Faramir rescued the body of the Jechennis Deborah from the clutches of Destaria a month ago or so. So she's not sure what they're going to find when they reach their destination, but she tells them they should all be ready to fight. And after that, they all drift off to sleep. That night, Ulysses, with Skinner's urging, removes the last joint of his little finger. He's surprised to learn that it didn't hurt after all, and there is little blood. The little device chews on the piece of finger and tells Ulysses that in the future perhaps he should eat more garlic. Then Ulysses wakes up. When Ulysses wakes up, he notices that his finger is still attached. Seraph wakes up and finds that he's been kidnapped and chained to a bed. He looks around and he sees himself standing above himself. It's a version of himself with large wings like he used to have. The winged version of himself tells him that the game is almost done. The winged version places both daggers at Seraph's chest and remarks, There is a little bit more of the game to be played, unless he wants to end it now and with a start. Seraph wakes up. As the party wakes up, they see Alcine talking to his men. When he's done, they all get on their horses and head off in different directions. He comes over to the party and tells them that he has dispatched his men to gather the queen's horse from wherever they may be. He says that he will be accompanying the party to Jackennis Deborah. They take the horses they're offered by Alcine. Estralia and Scala share a horse because they don't have enough, and they're both the lightest. They all follow Alcine into the hills. As Scala and Estralia ride, they talk. Scala says, "What was your mother like, Morgan, as a mother?" Estralia thinks for a second and then says that her mother and father had an arranged marriage through the church, and she was sent off to the Silver Guild under Stellargentium, one of her mother's friends who was a wizard. She said that she visited her family occasionally, but they weren't that close. She says that a year ago, her mother and brother-in-law Marcus had an attack where neither of them could remember what has happened for the last 14 years. That time was lost to them, and they don't remember any of it. Estralia asks Scala about herself. She says that she looks Mantuthian, but she doesn't speak like one and uses wizardry, something that is very rare amongst Mantuthians, as far as she knows. Scala tells her how early in her adventuring career with Morgan, she had died, but Morgan had drawn her spirit back. The only host was this body. The former inhabitant had died and was beyond retrieval, and since then, Scala has been trapped in this body. 2 days go by. After several attempts of Finn singing while riding, they come to the high ground and enter the town of Deborah's Hold. Some of the party were here a couple of weeks ago as they were heading to the hard pass. Seraph comments to Alcine that maybe if the Jackennis had just come outside, they could have saved all this trouble. Alcine comments that Deborah isn't in the town, but high in the mountains, so high that they'll leave their horses here and go the rest of the way on foot. They climb up the path. After a few hours, it gets narrower and narrower. Alcine comments that this is the second highest peak on the continent. The peak is called World Holder. Estralia says that when they went through the high passes beyond the city of Prue, she saw the mountain called Stardock. It is the highest peak on the continent, but this one looks less hospitable. They reach a large, flat area which is strewn with boulders, and cut into the living stone is a doorway. Akai picks up a random stick and comments that they can expect a rain. Alcine shakes his head and says that's impossible. There's not a cloud in the sky. Akai holds the stick in front of the man's face, and he sees that it's a broken sheesh arrow. "I meant a rain of arrows," says Akai, as arrows begin falling all around them.